Ever cram for a test like you know you've got it, then poof, gone the next day. It's like my brain's got a leak or something.
We're diving into David G. Myers' Exploring Psychology today, and let me tell you, he breaks down memory in a way that's seriously eye-opening.
What I find so fascinating about Myers is he doesn't just tell you how to remember, he gets into the nitty-gritty of the brain itself. Like, take his three-stage processing model. Explains why that whole cramming thing only works so well.
Wait, so I'm not alone here. There's a real reason my brain's such a sieve come test time.
You're definitely not alone. See, this model, it says our brains handle info in three stages. First up, sensory memory. It's super quick, like a snapshot of all the stuff you see, hear, feel. But unless you really focus, that snapshot's gone in a flash.
Right, like walking down a busy street, tons of stuff going on, but I only remember the weird attention-grabbing things.
Spot on. Those things, the ones that stand out, those might make it to short-term memory. Think of it like your mental workspace. Problem is, it's a small workspace. Juggle too much info at once and things start dropping. Okay, that explains a lot. It's like when someone tells you a phone number. Unless you're repeating it like crazy, seconds later, whoosh, gone.
Precisely. And this is where it gets cool. To make something stick long-term, we got to move it into, you guessed it, long-term memory. Myers talks about some really neat techniques. One that always comes to mind is mnemonics.
Mnemonics. Like memory palaces, I've always loved those, but never quite grasped how they worked.
Okay, picture this. You need to memorize your grocery list, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just trying to brute force it, you imagine walking through your childhood home. But each item on the list, you're putting it in a totally wacky spot, like a carton of milk balancing on the piano, loaf of bread sticking out of the mailbox. The weirder, the better.
So I'm using spatial memory, but tying it to something already stuck in my head. That's wild. Why does making it weird or funny help, though?
Because our brains, they love novelty. They latch onto things that are unusual, emotionally engaging by creating those vivid, kind of wacky associations. We're basically tricking our brains into really paying attention, storing that info more effectively.
So next time I need to remember something crucial. No more just jotting it down. Gonna make a whole mental movie about it, something bizarre I won't forget.
Now you're getting it. And honestly, that's just one example. Understanding how memory works, it gives us these really practical tools to improve our lives.
Okay, memory tricks, check. But now, onto something even more mysterious, even more fascinating. Dreams. We've all had them, those weird head-scratching ones that leave you wondering, what was that about? Luckily, Myers dives into the leading theories, and trust me, they're just as intriguing as the dreams themselves.
One that really sticks with me is the idea of dreams as emotional processors. Imagine your brain's like a computer, right? And every night it does this defrag, sorting through the day's stuff, making sense of it all.
So that dream I had where I'm presenting in my underwear, maybe my brain's just processing the anxiety of an actual presentation coming up.
Exactly. Dreams might be our brain's way to replay those emotions in a safe space, helping us regulate them, even if we don't remember the dream itself.
That's actually kind of comforting. But Myers doesn't stop there. He also talks about dreams as a window into the unconscious, right?
Precisely. This theory says dreams are like a canvas, where our deepest fears, desires, unresolved stuff, it all bubbles up. Recurring dreams, those strange symbols, they might hold clues about what's really going on in our minds.
Hold on. So if I keep dreaming about missing a train, could be my subconscious saying, I'm scared of missing out in my waking life.
It's definitely possible. Paying attention to those themes, those symbols in our dreams, it can give us this amazing self-awareness. And honestly, we're just scratching the surface of what Myers covers on dreams.
Talk about a deep dive. Now, shifting gears from the inner world of dreams to how we see the outer world. You mentioned earlier, Myers doesn't just state the obvious, and this next bit is a prime example. It totally changed how I view, well, viewing itself. It's all about this thing called perceptual set.
Perceptual set. What's so captivating is how it shows how much our past, our expectations, even our biases can totally warp how we see the present.
Wait, you mean what I see isn't always what's actually there?
Think of it like this. You're walking down a dark street at night, right? You see a shadowy figure, your heart starts racing, you grip your keys. But as you get closer, it's just a lamppost. Your brain, it was primed by the darkness, by your own worries, and it filled in the blanks with something scary.
Okay, yeah, that tracks. But how's this work in everyday life when I'm not dodging lamppost monsters?
Imagine you're at a party, deep in conversation with someone you find attractive. Everything they do, everything they say, you're likely to see it more positively, even if it's the exact same stuff someone you don't find attractive is doing.
So my brain's basically editing reality on the fly based on what I already believe. That's both kind of cool and kind of creepy.
Absolutely. Perceptual set, understanding it, it's huge. Makes you question your own biases, how subjective your own experiences can be. It pushes you to get different perspectives.
That's a lot to unpack, and we're just getting started. Onto a debate that's been raging for ages, nature versus nurture.
Are we just products of our genes, destined to be like our parents? Or are we shaped by our environment, our experiences, the people around us? Myers digs into this, and what he finds is seriously fascinating.
See, I always saw it as either it's in your genes or you learned it, but Myers presents it way more subtly, right?
It's not a battle, nature versus nurture. It's more like a dance, a
Ugh.
really complex dance. Think of it like this. Genes, they're the blueprint, the raw materials. But the environment, that's the architect shaping those materials into you.
So I might inherit, say, being introverted or extroverted from my parents, but it's how I was raised, my friends, my life, that determines how that actually shows up in my personality.
Exactly. Myers talks about these twin studies, and they're amazing. Identical twins, same DNA, often show these crazy similarities, even when raised apart.
So it's like their genes provide this basic template, but wait, doesn't that contradict the whole nurture argument?
Not at all. While these studies show genes are important, they also prove that environment matters hugely. Those twins, same blueprint, still become different people, shaped by their own unique experiences.
So no predetermined destiny. It's about how our genes interact with our environment. That's kind of a relief, means we've got more control than we think. But what about those times when we feel totally out of control, ruled by our emotions? Which brings us to stress.
Stress, it's universal, right? Can be motivating or absolutely draining.
Hmm.
Myers breaks down the science of stress, and it's surprisingly insightful. Ever wonder why, after being stressed out for ages, you just hit a wall?
Oh, tell me about it. It's like my brain and body just go, nope, we're done.
Here's the thing, the burnout, it's not random. There's a pattern to it. Myers calls it the General Adaptation Syndrome, or GAS. Imagine your body's like a country gearing up for war.
Cue the air raid sirens.
First stage, the alarm phase. Your body's fight or flight kicks in, adrenaline pumping, getting you ready to face the threat.
Right, the racing heart, sweaty palms. It's like my body's ready to rumble. But what if the threat, say, a crazy job or, gestures broadly, what if it doesn't go away?
That's when you hit stage 2. Resistance. Your body's trying to adapt to this constant state of high alert. You might not even realize how much energy it's taking just to keep going.
And that's where it starts to catch up with you, right?
Eventually, yeah. If the stress keeps coming or there's just too much, you hit exhaustion. Body's resources are spent, burnout city, and that's when you're vulnerable to getting sick, both mentally and physically.
So basically my body's been sprinting a marathon and it finally collapses. Makes so much sense now.
Good news is, knowing this pattern, we can actually interrupt it. Myers talks about stress management techniques, things like mindfulness, meditation. They help us control our stress response, build resilience.
So instead of stress controlling me, I can learn to manage it, maybe even use it to my advantage.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of this, understanding the psychology of it all. Whether it's memory, dreams, or even stress, it gives us tools to live better, happier lives.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty empowered already, and we're just getting warmed up. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this quick break. And we're back, diving deep into exploring psychology. Before the break, we were getting all worked up about stress, but Myers doesn't just leave us hanging there. He takes us into how we human with each other.
Social interactions, they're fascinating, right?
See?
So complex. And Myers, he gets into this thing called social influence, which, let's be real, affects like everything you do.
Yeah.
One study he talks about always blows my mind. It's Solomon Asch's conformity experiment. Imagine this. You're in a room, bunch of people, and you're asked this super simple question, like comparing lengths of lines, totally obvious answer, right?
Okay.
But here's the thing. Everyone else in the room, they start giving the wrong answer.
Ooh, okay. Now I'm hooked.
Yeah,
Knowing me, I'd probably be second-guessing my own eyeballs at that point.
exactly. What Ash found was a lot of people, they caved. They went along with the group, even though it was clearly wrong. Shows you how strong that urge to fit in is, even if it means ignoring what you know is right.
So it's not just about being a pushover. There's like actual psychology behind it. But does that mean we're all just sheep blindly following the herd?
Not exactly. Myers points out that why we conform, it varies. Maybe you're feeling unsure of yourself or you really admire the group you're with. And honestly, conformity is not always bad. Can be good for, like, bring people together, getting them to work together.
Right. Makes sense. We're social creatures, deep down, belonging, it's in our nature. But what about when things get less sunny? When our social sides take a dark turn? Myers tackles aggression too, right?
Oh, absolutely. And he does it really thoughtfully, looks at the biology, but also how much our environment plays a role. He says we've got this capacity for aggression built in, maybe left over from, like, way back in our evolutionary history.
So we've got these primal instincts, but whether they come out depends on how we're raised, our surroundings.
Exactly. Kid grows up loved, supported, way less likely to lash out aggressively than a kid who, say, grew up in chaos, or worse, abuse.
Myers talks about this experiment, the Bobo doll experiment by Albert Bandura. Kids saw adults being mean to this inflatable doll. Guess what? They were more likely to be mean to it too.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. It's crazy how much we pick up just by watching, especially as kids. But that's kind of depressing, isn't it? Like, if we see violence all the time, are we doomed to repeat it?
That's where it gets really interesting because, yeah, environment matters a lot. But we're not puppets, right? We have a choice. Myers talks about altruism, the ability we have to be kind, selfless, even when it costs us.
So even with all the bad stuff, we've still got this good side, this urge to help.
Exactly. And Myers, he explores why we're altruistic. One idea is it's evolutionary. Helping your family, your group, means your genes are more likely to survive.
So, like, even if it puts me at risk, helping others could mean my genes get passed down.
Why?
It's not just about survival, though. Myers also talks about empathy, compassion as drivers of altruism. You see someone hurting, you feel for them, you want to help.
So not just our genes pulling the strings, but our ability to connect, really feel what others are feeling.
Exactly. And just like we learn aggression by watching, Myers says we can learn altruism too, through education, positive role models, even the media we consume. It's about showing those stories of compassion, of people being brave and kind, to inspire others to do the same.
That's a message I think we all need to hear, especially these days when it feels like the news is all doom and gloom. Okay, so we've talked about being selfless, but what about, well, the opposite? Myers doesn't shy away from attraction, which, let's face it, is a pretty powerful force. What did you find most interesting about that section?
Attraction, it's such a mix of, like, our bodies and our minds. We might want to believe we choose who we like based on, personality, shared values. But Myers, he's like, hold on, don't forget about that initial spark, that physical attraction.
So those cheesy rom-coms were onto something. It really is about that initial spark.
It's definitely part of it, but there's more to it than that. Myers talks about the proximity effect, the similarity attraction effect. Basically, we tend to like people we're around a lot and people who are similar to us in terms of hobbies, values, even personality.
So maybe those movie meet-cutes aren't so crazy after all. Being close to someone, having things in common, those are pretty good starting points for attraction to grow.
Totally. And then there's this whole you like me, I like you back thing called reciprocity. When someone likes us, it makes us feel good, right? Boosts our ego, and suddenly they seem even more attractive.
So it's a two-way street. Not just about finding someone attractive, but being found attractive by someone. Makes sense. It's about mutual respect, admiration, but let's be real, sometimes you just can't explain it. It's like this chemistry. Right, totally. Myers even says, for all we've learned about attraction, there's still that mystery, that spark that just happens, no logic to it. And maybe that's what makes love and relationships so fascinating. Couldn't agree more. Okay, time to switch gears again. We've talked about love. Now let's talk about something that affects millions of people.
Yeah.
Psychological disorders. And Myers, he handles this with such compassion, making it clear these are real medical conditions, not character flaws. Where do we even begin with such a big topic?
What struck me was how Myers takes away that stigma, that shame that often comes with mental illness. He presents these disorders like any other medical condition. They have biological, psychological, even social factors at play.
It's about moving away from blame and towards understanding, empathy.
Exactly. He starts with anxiety, which is super common. But he's careful to distinguish between everyday anxiety, which we all feel, and the kind of anxiety that takes over your life becomes a disorder.
Yeah, like everyone says, oh, I'm so OCD, when they mean they like things organized. But there's a huge difference between that and actual OCD.
Huge difference. Myers explains, it's one thing to feel anxious before a presentation, that's normal. It's another thing entirely to have anxiety so bad you can't even leave your house.
He talks about different types of anxiety too, like generalized anxiety, panic disorder, phobias.
And those disorders, People don't get it. They think it's as easy as just get over it, but it's so much deeper than that.
Right. Myers explains that these disorders, they often come from a mix of things. Genes, brain chemistry, stuff that's happened in your life. And just like any medical condition, they often need professional help.
And this is where Myers really shines, explaining those complexities. He talks about different therapies, like cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps people change those negative thought patterns that can fuel anxiety.
It's about giving people the tools to understand their anxiety, manage it, take back their lives.
And that's just anxiety. Myers also covers depression, which affects so many people.
What I appreciated there was how he pointed out the difference between, having a bad day, feeling down, which is normal, and then there's clinical depression. So not just the blues then.
Nope. Depression is way more intense, affects your thoughts, feelings, how you act, even your physical health. Myers explains it can look like constant sadness, losing interest in things you used to love, changes in sleep, appetite, always feeling tired, trouble concentrating, even feeling worthless, guilty.
Like this darkness just settles in, makes it hard to find joy in anything.
And while the causes of depression are complex, could be genes, brain chemistry, trauma, all sorts of things, Myers makes it clear effective treatments exist.
So there is hope, even with such a tough disorder.
Absolutely. Myers talks about different options: therapy, medication, even lifestyle changes. He talks about cognitive behavioral therapy for depression too, challenging those negative thoughts, and medication like antidepressants, which can help rebalance your brain chemistry.
So it's about finding what works for you because everyone's different.
Exactly. And again, just like with anxiety, Myers emphasizes getting professional help, breaking down that stigma, encouraging people to reach out for support.
This whole discussion on disorders, it's eye-opening, but also really empowering. It's about understanding, compassion, and knowing that there is help out there.
And that's what's so great about psychology. It helps us understand the human mind, all its quirks, but also those tough parts of life, the stuff we often avoid talking about.
Well said. Now, before we wrap up, we're going to explore some truly uplifting concepts. Stay tuned. And we're back, ready to wrap up this deep dive into exploring psychology. We've covered a ton of ground, from how our brains try to remember stuff to the wild world of social influence and even those tough-to-talk-about psychological disorders. But Myers, he doesn't leave us in the dumps. He brings us back up, talking about some truly inspiring stuff.
It's true, psychology isn't all about what's wrong with us, right? It's also about what makes us tick, what makes us thrive.
Exactly. And speaking of thriving, this next topic really blew me away, the concept of flow. Myers describes it as this total absorption, where you're so into what you're doing, time just kind of disappears.
Ah, flow. It's that feeling of being in the zone, where your skills are perfectly matched to whatever you're doing. You're just completely present in the moment. Think of like a musician lost in their music, an athlete pushing their limits, a painter who's totally in sync with their art.
It's like you tap into this well of pure focus, creativity. And it's not even about achieving something, it's the joy of the doing.
Exactly. And while we often think of flow with creative stuff, Myers says it can happen anywhere. Playing a sport, working on a tough project, anything that really grabs your attention.
So it's not just for artists and athletes. Anyone can experience this flow state. How do we get some of that?
Think of it like a balancing act. On one side, you've got how challenging something is. On the other side, your skill level. Flow happens when those two are in balance. Too challenging, you get frustrated. Too easy, you get bored. It's finding that sweet spot where you're stretched but not overwhelmed.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's like finding the perfect difficulty setting in a video game, tough enough to be fun, but not so tough you're going to toss your controller across the room. So how do we create more of these flow states in our own lives?
Myers suggests, start by finding things you're actually passionate about, things that challenge you and excite you. Could be anything: painting, writing, sports, learning something new, even gardening or cooking, if that's your jam.
It's about those things that make you forget about time, where you're so absorbed, nothing else matters.
Exactly. And it's not just about finding the right activity, but also the right mindset. Focused attention, being open to the challenge, and, this is big, ditching that inner critic.
So being present, embracing the difficulty, and telling that voice in your head that says you can't do it to take a hike.
Exactly. And the benefits of flow, they go way beyond that one experience. Myers says it can boost your creativity, problem solving, even your overall happiness.
So those flow experiences, they're like good for your soul.
In a way, yeah. They energize you, fulfill you. You come out feeling different. And the best part, the more you tap into flow, the easier it becomes to find it again. in other areas of your life.
Whoa, so it's like this positive feedback loop. The more you flow, the more potential you unlock, not just in that one thing, but in everything.
Now you're getting it. And that's what I love about exploring psychology. It shows how everything's connected. Our memories, perceptions, how we interact with others, even those tough times, those disorders. It's all part of this incredible journey of being human.
It's like psychology gives us a map to navigate it all. Our minds, our emotions, helps us understand who we are, why we do what we do, and how to live a life that feels, well, more alive.
Beautifully put. And the journey never really ends, does it? There's always more to learn, more to explore, more to discover about ourselves, about the human mind.
That's a great note to end on. A message of hope, of possibility, of always searching for more. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into exploring psychology with David G. Myers.
It's been a pleasure exploring these fascinating ideas with you. Until next time, remember to keep that curiosity alive, keep asking those big questions, and never stop being amazed by the power of your own mind.